I was a really bad pagan for quite a long time. I used to refer to myself as vaguely pagan. I'd kind of dabbled in various bits and pieces. I'd tried out Wicca and it hadn't quite worked. And the only thing from paganism that that really struck me was the Wheel of the Year. I knew that was a really special thing for me. So I had to follow something that honoured the Wheel of the Year. But I kind of drifted in and out for a very long time, and I began teaching creative writing. And as part of that, I was trying to find ideas that would inspire other people and inspire people to write. But I found it really difficult to inspire myself. And just kind of rambling around on the internet one night, I came across a website for Druidry, which promised inspiration. It said, join Obod and we promise you Arwen. We promise you will be inspired with Arwen. And then I found out that honoured the Wheel of the Year as well. So bringing together the Wheel of the Year and that inspiration was what took me to Druidry in the first place. It's very coincidental that I found it. And in terms of what it means to me now, it's actually is moving through from being a spirituality into something very practical for me. So I've now finished my Obod training. I'm a druid. I'm a fully signed up certificated druid. And I'm applying it in other areas of my life. So I'm hoping soon to become a druid mentor for people who are just starting out on the path. And I've also taken it into my working life. So used to be an English teacher, but I'm now a trained environmental manager because I want to work with animals and with carbon and helping to save the planet. It was a difficult step after the Ritual of Writing, which was based on 15 years of being a creative writing teacher. You then think, well, what's next? Where do I go next? And I really wanted to do something very different. I didn't want to stick to the same kind of thing. And so I'd been reading a lot of pagan portal books. I'd read Gwyn ap Neath by Danu Forest and Morgan Daimler's Thought, and I just was really impressed with them. I loved the connection between the author and the deity. And so I thought, well, okay, I'll have a go at one of them. But then the question was, well, who do I write about? Because I don't really honour any deity particularly closely. So I kind of went through kind of a number of Celtic deities, and the name that kept coming back to me was Artio. Find out about Artio. So I looked into Artio, this bear goddess, and I found out there's about 5 pieces of information on her. That's it. And I was like, oh, okay. I can't write a book on 5 pieces of information. So I thought, okay, well, there's this other god who's being named, Artawis. So I'll just include him and that'll be much easier. Well, there's 1 piece of information on Artawis. So how do you write a book with 6 pieces of information? So I thought, okay, well, I've kind of got to go and find out about these bear gods. So I'll write about that journey of discovery. So it started with a pilgrimage, an actual physical journey to go and find the statue of Artio in Bern, in Switzerland. And that was such an amazing thing to do, being able to actually kind of get on a train in London and end up in Switzerland. And then coming back, trying to consolidate that into some kind of thing that people would find interesting. And then all these other options come up. So as I was typing away on Facebook, this flyer kept coming up saying, bears are coming back to Britain. And it was advertising Bearwood, a new animal sanctuary in Bristol. And so it was like I was being led, both physically to go to certain places, but also spiritually as well, to find out new things. So yeah, the Artio and Artemis book really did end up being a journey, both spiritual and physical. If you'd asked me cat or dog about 15 years ago, I would very definitely have said dog. I was a dog person all through my youth. I've wanted a dog for most of my adult life. And about 15 years ago, I wanted to get a puppy. And I ended up with a kitten, a black and white kitten who we ended up calling Marlowe, or who named himself Marlowe. So you could tell he was trouble. And he really was. He was this feisty little animal, nothing like the cats that you read about in books who are kind of aloof. Marlowe was very demanding. Marlowe was kind of in your face. He wanted any kind of attention he could get. Even if it was negative attention, he would like run around knocking things off the side just so that you show him some attention. And he destroyed several Christmas trees. And so we thought, well, I know, we'll get another cat because Marlowe wants attention, so we'll get another cat. And we got a rescue chap called Alfie, who is big and lanky and ginger. And Alfie's very different to Marlowe, whereas Marlowe's very confident and will strut into a room. Alfie is very quiet. He's very nervous. He's very jumpy. And so, as I said, that was 15 years ago. And now my boys are my world. If you ask me cat or dog now, it's very definitely cat. And my cats are like my children. They have the run of the house. They can do what they want. If you hear scratching at the door, that's probably one of them. Yeah, I just adore cats now. My writing regime is incredibly structured. It's very structured, and it has to be. I remember when I wrote The Ritual of Writing, it went from initial blank page to being accepted by Moon Books within 6 weeks. Because I was like, I am writing chapter 1 today. I am writing chapter 2 today. And I sat down and I would be very, very disciplined and get the word count done. Then obviously it doesn't stay like that. Then you go back through it and you adjust it and you change it. And that's a bit more of a kind of a movable feast in terms of the time that you're taking. But I have to be very, very structured. My next book, The Magic of Cats, was done in exactly the same way. I would put 45 minutes in before work, and I would use that 45 minutes to kind of get things down. And then I actually wrote it over Christmas. And so I was like, right, today I am writing chapter 6, and tomorrow I am writing chapter 7. And I have to do that. The only one that wasn't really like that was RTO and Artemis, which kind of expanded to fill the time. And I missed my deadline on that one. I had to have an extension on that. And it's the only one I've ever had because, like I say, I am absolutely on a very strict schedule. I do like going and sitting under trees with a notebook and writing by hand and doing all that, but that's where I get my ideas. That's where the ideas come from. When I'm writing a book, it's a job of work. The book that best defines me, I think, is the next one that's coming out. It's The Magic of Cats. And it defines me best because I think it's got a number of different aspects of my writing in it. So in some senses, it's very similar to RTO and Artemis in that it takes a very broad range of information and material and condenses it down. I'm a very right-brained person. I like knowing a lot about a little bit about a lot of different things. So there's a very, very wide net cast in The Magic of Cats. You know, there's legend, there's myth, there's some biology in there, there's poetry, it's you know, there's some books. The only thing I don't think I get to is TV and film. I don't quite get there, which I did in RTO and Artemis, but I love that scope, that wide scope of influence. But what's extra about The Magic of Cats kind of goes back to the ritual of writing, which is the creative writing element. And in The Magic of Cats, I've got a bit more of a chance to do a bit more descriptive writing with some of the myths and legends that are in there. But also the whole thing is structured around a poem, which I wrote about 10 years ago, called The Cat of the Night and the Cat of the Day. And I go to poetry festivals and read that out. And in the book, you find out a little bit more about who the cat of the night is and who the cat of the day is. So it's not only got that kind of very broad range, which I love, but it's also got some of my creative work in it as well. The first writer I'm going to go for is the writer who actually brought me to Moon Books. And that's a writer, a Druid writer called Nimue Brown. And I discovered Nimwe's writing, I would say, about 6 months before I submitted my first book to Moon Books. And I love Nimwe's style of writing. She writes about some really complicated elements of Druidry. I'm thinking particularly of Druidry and the ancestors, which has got some quite difficult bits in it. But Nimwe's writing is really open, it's really clear, and I love the way that when Nimue writes, you can tell it's like she's with you. There's a real personability about her writing. And when I started writing myself for Moon Books, that's kind of what I wanted to bring. I wanted to write like Nimue. So she's my first choice. My second choice is very different, but it's my favorite writer of all time. And it's the person who taught me that writing has rhythm, that writing has structure and purpose. And that's Victoria Wood, who, if you don't know her, is a British comedian. And her comedy, when she delivers it, is absolutely spot on. She had this saying, you know, there is a right word, there is a word that is funniest in a particular place. And she, for some reason, she used to write a lot about biscuits. And so she talked a lot about how the phrase gypsy cream is funnier than custard cream or bourbon, you know, so there are rhythms and bounces to words that are funnier. But when you see her later writing, which is more serious and dramatic, it's exactly the same. It's not funny, but every word is in the right place. And that's why I love her as a writer, because she can make you laugh and she can make you cry, but it's all in the writing. And she was such a wonderful writer. I always try to aspire to be like her and think, what would Victoria Wood do? Where do I even start with favourite film? I'm a child of the 70s. I could talk about Star Wars. I could talk about the Lord of the Rings films. They're amazing. I watch them every year. My favourite film of all time, I'm a very, very big horror film fan. So my favourite film of all time is Halloween, the 1978 John Carpenter film. But when you tell people that's your favourite film, they tend to think you're a bit weird. So I'm going to go for a 1980 John Carpenter film called The Fog, which is his follow-up to Halloween, but is very different. So it feels very old-fashioned. Even when it was made in 1980s, it felt very old-fashioned. It's a spooky story rather than a slasher film. And it's about a seaside town that is celebrating its centenary, and something nasty comes out of its past and out of the fog. And I love it because it's so atmospheric. And we're in the days well before CGI, but somehow or other, John Carpenter gets the fog to move and live, and it's a character in its own right rather than just being kind of in the background. Don't quite know how he does that, but I can watch the fog endlessly. I love it. It's so spooky and so wonderful. And in terms of song, I'm going to pick a song from 1992 when I was 20, and I was just on my way to university. So it reminds me of that change in my life from being a child to being an adult, that very hopeful period. And it's a song by an artist called Tasmin Archer, and it's called Sleeping Satellite. And I was a very poppy young person, and it was the first time that I'd ever really heard a song that wasn't about love, because this song is about the space race and going to the moon. And its video is just this thing of beauty. It's all kind of deep blues. There's a Renaissance feel to it, stacks of books covered in dust. There's like a Galileo figure and a cherub. And she stands there singing in this amazing frock coat while glitter pours down on her. And it just is the most beautiful song and the most beautiful video. And it's got a line in it which stuck out to me at the time and which has just become so prescient, I think. And it's, if the world is so green, why does she scream under a blue moon? And it's about our technological advances and how we waste the earth in our technological drive. So yeah, Sleeping Satellite by Tasmin Archer. The coolest thing about being a writer is being able to build a world and lose yourself in it. That's the coolest thing about being a writer, whether that's a fiction or a non-fiction book. So all of my books, whether it, as I've said about RTO and Artemis here, going off on that journey, being able to lose myself and follow that path, and the magic of cats, just being able to really immerse myself in that world, that's the coolest thing about being a writer. That's a hard one because that's so broad. There's so many. I mean, am I contractually obliged to bring RTO along? The only problem is I don't think RTO would be very good at holding the knife and fork, so it might be a bit messy. So I don't think I'll invite her. I think as a druid, I think I need a decent wizard there. So I'll go for Gandalf the Grey. Yes, or maybe the White, actually. No, we'll go for Gandalf the Grey. I did kind of wonder about Merlin there, but I think Merlin might be a bit judgmental. So we won't have Merlin, we'll go for Gandalf. I'm a really big fan of RuPaul's Drag Race. It's just the best thing in the world. So I would like Jinx Monsoon to come to my dinner party, please, because Jinx Monsoon is my favourite drag queen and will make the rest of us laugh, be hysterical. The final person I'm going to bring along is Greta Thunberg, just because every time I see her speak, I am just in awe of how someone that young is that articulate. And I would just love to have time to chat with her. I think Gandalf might between Gandalf and Jinx Monsoon, they might kind of chipper her up a bit as well. So in terms of what I'm going to serve, well, Greta's a vegan and I'm a vegan, so it's got to be vegan. I think we're going to go for some kind of Thai tofu stir fry, I think, for our main course. That's where we're going to go. Really easy. Do it. Write it. I used to be a creative writing teacher, as I said, and I had a lot of students who used to sit around kind of just doing that for a long time, for a couple of hours. You go, what are you doing? And like, well, I'm thinking. And it's like, well, you might be thinking, but this is called creative writing, not thinking. And you've got to get to the point where you can think and think and think as much as you want. But until you actually write it, no one's going to read it. No one's going to see it. You're not going to know whether it's going to work. So the best piece of advice I can give you is just write it.